Boston Red Sox, let's begin there. According to Nick Cafardo of the Boston Globe, the Red Sox are one of the 4 teams that have made an offer to the Phillies for Cole Hamels. He's also reporting that the deal Boston offered the Phillies was heavy on major league players. Now, clearly the Phillies are looking to rebuild, and top prospects are on their menu. They do not need big leaguers at the moment that have deep pockets. Joe, what do you make of this story that looks like the Red Sox do not want to part ways with, we don't know, but Blake Swihart seems to be the guy the Phillies would be interested in?
Yeah, Swihart's a guy, he's entering his age 23 season. He had an 840 OPS last year, a switch hitter with a little bit of power that he thinks he can grow into a little more. He's obviously a very promising player. It does give me pause, if I'm the Red Sox and you've got the team you have on paper, and if you're just one starting pitcher away, I'd be very tempted to pull the trigger and include him.
It makes sense, right?
No, not at all. Don't do it. Don't even think about it. Here's why. I hate to say there's a lot of Cole Hamels out there, but, you got Jordan Zimmerman, David Price, Johnny Cueto at the end of the year, potential free agents. There's other people in play. I actually like the rotation right now. I think the game is more built on relief pitching now than starting pitching. I think they're fine. They have the best offense in the league. Now, talk about the catcher. You can't find catchers like this. This is a guy who probably profiles with skills similar to Buster Posey. And I'm not saying he's the next Buster Posey, but a catcher who can hit for average. He can hit from both sides of the plate, Blake. 15, 20 home runs. That's an all-star catcher.
But is he going to be an all-star catcher now?
No.
The team's ready to win now. So the question is, why not go get a guy? They got 4 years of control with Cole Hamels, right? If you go make the move.
Yeah, plus money, plus you'll probably have to give up more than the catcher. I just think you look around, the worst position by batting average of the 10, including DH in baseball, is catcher. And you've got a guy who can be a linchpin of this franchise going forward. Any other position, I might say I'd consider it. Too hard to find another catcher like him. I can find another pitcher like Hamels.
But at the same time, we're seeing more and more value on pitch framing, some of those defensive skills, and they have a guy in Vasquez who might be able to fill that role a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think that when you use what Tom talks about, and you might have a future Buster Posey, as far as championships, that's worked out pretty well for Buster and the Giants. When I think about this team, though, everyone wants to say, hey, we know exactly what we're getting with Hamels. You know exactly what he's going to make. Well, you know exactly what the other guy's going to make at some point, too, if you decide to wait a year and sign some guys. The only issue is if Cueto and others expect what Max Scherzer got. Instead of the 150, they're in the 200 range. We know with Hamels, even if the 5th year is vested because he's traded, it's only at 110, I think the number is, for 5 years. So it's not a bad number. But I know what you're saying. You asked an important question, though. All right, Red Sox on paper, right? Last place team last year.
Right.
On paper, ready to win now. Is that absolute? Are they absolutely ready to win 90-plus games?
I think they're an absolute contender. And this is another reason why we don't see trades this time of year. They built this team in the offseason. They like what they have right now. There's no urgency to go get a starting pitcher. Maybe in July? Yes, there could be an urgency then if the plan does not work. I think that's a team on paper right now can win 88, 89 games.
Which is fine. That was the perfect word you used.
Yeah.
They're fine. But you put Cole Hamels on that piece of paper in that rotation. They're better than fine. They're the favorite in the AL East.
They are. And to the other point, though, is that the last week of spring training is another time to, if you have some good scouting, you might be able to, there are usually some roster spots that are a little too full. You can often get a good extra piece then, too, and then make your way through the first few months of the season.
And more importantly is if you think the Red Sox are that kind of team, you replace John Lester with Cole Hamels for about the same money that you offered Lester in spring training.
That's a good point, and not as many years to boot. In other news, the Detroit News is reporting that Justin Verlander has put on 20 pounds of muscle this offseason. The right-hander is trying to rebound from a rough 2014 where his ERA was over 4.5 with decreased velocity. He's entering his age 32 season. He's owed $140 million over the next 5 years. Now, one thing we need to point out, Ron, is that he had an oblique core injury last year. So 1 year ago, he was rebounding from that injury, and some people think that his mechanics were thrown off because he wasn't 100% in his core. Are you buying that?
What happens with pitchers is that if you're trying to protect an area or you don't feel confident about an area, you will alter your mechanics to try to protect that area. I think even more importantly for Justin is that he's coming off a season that is Verlander-like, a couple of seasons to tell you the truth. And the 20 pounds of muscle to me seems exactly the evolution of all pitchers. All pitchers start out, if they're going to have a great career like he's had, invincible. Nothing's ever going to happen to me. I'm going to make 35 every year. I'm going to win 18 to 22 every year, and everything's going to go hunky-dory. And then the injury bug starts hitting. And once that hits, then you have to build up some muscle. Why? Just for your, brain to comprehend, say, listen, I'm getting a little older. I've got 2,000 plus innings under my belt. I need to be a little stronger. And these are the kind of things that pitchers do to counter it.
I think what's interesting about Verlander is that he's gone through a big transformation like this before. He was, burst on the scene in 06 and 07, was very good. And in 08, he led the American League in losses, had an ERA of almost 5. And he realized that going into that season, because of the innings he had thrown, he had eliminated long toss and sort of dialed back some of the offseason training to preserve the arm. And so instead, he went in the opposite direction, entering that 09 season. And he worked more on flexibility of the upper body, chest and arm. And obviously, 09 is sort of the beginning of the Justin Verlander that we know that sort of culminated with that MVP season. So it worked very well that time. This is a very different approach, but he's sort of shown that he's smart about his own body and kind of knows what he needs.
But Tom, it's something, and I'm a fan of this club. I'm excited to see that he's working hard to do anything he can to come back from the worst season of his career.
Yeah, I think he should be. You made a great point, though, about that injury. I don't think he was ever on track starting opening day, a little bit behind, because he couldn't work as much. So I'm expecting him to have a bounce-back season. Listen, he turns 32 next month. His average four-seam velocity has gone down 5 years in a row. Velocity is a declining skill as you age. I do think, though, that he can get some back. Last year he sat 93, 94. I think he can get some back because I think he got in some bad habits last year mechanically, especially with his deceleration at the end of his motion. I know for a fact he's been working on that. That's one of the things he's done a lot of work on. I expect you'll see him back, better velocity, better numbers this year.